I wish I could stitch it, but for some reason I can't. I reposted it, but it's a woman who interviewed RFK Jr. this weekend because he's currently out there trying to explain to everybody that although he has spent 25 years with his bullshit vaccines are unsafe crap, now that the measles outbreak keeps on increasing its number every year, and it's increasing its number in the population of anti-vaxxers. The kids vaccinated for measles not getting the measles. Who's getting the measles? The kids of the parents who didn't vaccinate their kids. Almost like for 25 years he was spreading absolute bullshit, and now it has real life consequences. So he's doing this tour. Really, he wants to talk about the fact that he now has a cooking show, so like he's just as cool as Bobby Flay and Rachel Ray. Yes, yeah, he is as cool as those two. And just delusional. Cream corn does not belong with enchiladas, Rachel Ray. Cream corn does not belong in enchiladas. I don't. Anyway, he is basically, like talking to this blonde woman who's asking the questions. I don't know her name. And he's like, well, you don't understand the science. And she's like, well, you're not a scientist either. And you can see that he's just like, And then later in the conversation, he says again, well, the science. And she's like, okay, but you're not a scientist. She admits neither is she. But she's just like, again, you're not a scientist. It is true, RFK Jr. does have a law degree. And in his early years, he was really into the environment. Like, there was a time in which we would have supported him because he was rather vigilant on, like, we need to protect our water and we need to protect our animals, except for the ones I hit with my car and then drive home or dump in Central Park. But, like, at some point, probably around the time the worm got into his brain, he just pivoted. But I mean, we're also talking about a guy who at his core believed that Schmeroin was a study aid, and that you were really teaching germs who was boss by snorting cocaine off the top of a toilet tank at Studio 54. Yeah, because you could just use hand soap and water, but instead, that's the way to teach germs. While he is trying to promote his cooking show and remind people that they need to take vaccines because vaccines work, and they are the best way to keep our kids safe, he is instead trying to lecture this woman, and she rightly points out, like, you're trying to do all these studies to prove your point. And he's like, that's not what we're trying to do. No, you're intentionally setting up studies, forcing people to find chemical explanations for autism. We know it's related to genetics. We've already solved for that. We need to do more research into that, but you would very much prefer if it was caused by, like, red number 40. So you are intentionally spending government money trying to force these studies to prove what you want to be true. If these studies come back and say that your theories are all wrong, like circumcisions don't cause autism, will you accept the truth of the matter? Like the guy who was the flat earther, paid to send rockets up to, like, look at the curve of the earth to prove it was flat, and then, like, they came back with all the images that proved that the earth was round. He's still fighting it, but a part of him was like, oh fuck, maybe I was wrong. Maybe this side's round, the other side's just flat, But this woman at her core did a really great thing, because she said flat out to his face, like, I might not understand the science, but neither do fucking you, and yet you're out there presenting like you're a scientist. You're out there giving advice like you're a scientist, like you understand fundamentally what is happening. Now, all of us have taken a basic biology, chemistry class. We have some idea. But much like we can't spot the difference between a journalist and a TikToker who just reads the headlines they want to read from CNN, there are people who give their opinions like facts, like scientific fact, and then there are actual scientists. We should be following and listening to the actual journalists, the actual scientists, not the RFK Juniors who are just trying to bend science to their will. You will always find somebody who is willing for pay to make up a study, fake a headline. Science only works when you can repeat it over and over and over again. You have a theory, you do the science, you publish a paper, and then other people try to do what you did to, prove it. And then prove it over and over and over again. It's a really great clip, and you should watch it. But it's once again a reminder that there are scientists and scientific speakers. There are journalists and people who present like they are journalists. And it's very important that we know the difference and call out the difference. Because here's this misogynist douchebag of like, well, you're not a scientist. Bitch, neither are you. You're saying things like you are. You hold a position where you should be. You're not. You are less qualified than half the cabbies in New York City for this job. Because like half the cabbies in New York City hold degrees in science and medicine. Make sure you know the difference. Make sure you pay attention to the difference and be very cautious in who you let influence you. There are parents whose kids have measles and they will have the lifetime consequences of the measles, something we had solved for. The number of measles cases in our country was so low that we just considered it zero because it was so low. We had over 2,500 cases this year. And yet those parents, because they were so just like warped by misinformation, even though their kids are actively in the hospital being treated for measles, are still doubling down on, like, well, vaccines are bullshit. Yes, these kids, when they turn 18, are probably going to run to the local clinic and get all their vaccination shots, but they're going to have to make it through the first 18 years. When even Mitch fucking Vegetative McConnell is on the side of vaccines, you know you're in the wrong if you're like, vaccines are bullshit, they don't do anything. Even Mitch McConnell is on the side of vaccines. And you know in his heart, if it's still beating, he wishes he didn't have to side with science on that, but even he can admit, like, no, they're life-changing. They work. And he's definitely had the COVID vaccine. So have most of our politicians, including RFK Jr. Because what he says on camera and what he does in his doctor's office are two wildly different things.